Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post, publisher of more than 1,000 comic books and marketing expert covering Bud Light. The boycott has ruined Bud Light. The sales are in for the week ended June 24th, which are the most recent sales telling us how Bud Light is actually selling in stores. It's not selling well. This is another record drop. Last week was a record, and this is another record even lower than last week. They have moved 31.3% less bottles and cans, less volume than they did the year prior for the same week. It's an absolute disaster for Bud Light. They're giving the beer away in promotions. Sometimes the beer is as little as 33 cents a can. Sometimes it's free. And they still can't match the volume of a year ago when they actually used to charge full price for it. Their CEO, Brendan Whitworth, is now being asked to resign by former Anheuser-Busch distribution president, who really does actually understand the business very well, because he said that they haven't solved the problem, they're not addressing the problem, and the problem won't be solved until this CEO steps down and somebody new comes in to try to fix the company. Let's get into the story. Before we do, please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up. Really appreciate you guys. I'm trying to get to 50,000 subscribers, so if you can subscribe, please do subscribe. Okay, coming from the New York Post and from my email, Bump Williams has sent the new numbers, and here's what they say. Bud Light sales sink 28% heading into July 4th holiday after the Dylan Mulvaney fiasco. When they say 28%, here's the exact numbers. It's 27.9% down for revenue, actual dollars brought in from customers buying beer. It is, however, in units sold, in actual physical bottles and cans, it's off 31.3% from the same week the previous year. Last week, it was only 31.1%. And those extra 0.2 percent points means many bottles and cans of beer not being sold. We also heard this story about glass bottling plants that were forced to shut down. Good union jobs, because Bud Light just can't buy glass bottles from them anymore. Why not? Well, because the promotion of Dylan Mulvaney has caused their sales to completely collapse. While it's 31.3% by volume nationwide, it's much worse in southern states. We don't have exact numbers everywhere, but we do have 60% in one area in Florida where it's down. We have another area in Pennsylvania that's 45%, another one in Delaware that's off 40%, another one in New York that's off 50%. It's clear that if bottling plants are going to go to the trouble and the expense of going out of business, literally closing the operations down, and letting all the employees go, that they know there's not going to be any bounce back in business. Sad to see those people lose their jobs. They just happen to be in business with the wrong people. Quote, the 4th of July is the biggest beer holiday in terms of retail sales and an opportunity to move a lot of volume. Dave Williams, the vice president of the consultancy, said, and there's been no notable signs where the course has changed for Bud Light, meaning it continues to go down further and further. The backlash against Bud Light began on April 1st when Mulvaney posted photos and a video of the trans influencer drinking the beer and touting that Mulvaney was a Bud Light partner. It was not clear whether or not Dylan Mulvaney was the new face of Bud Light or what it was they were doing with the promotion. And they waited weeks to make any comment whatsoever about the promotion, so customers were left to go and run with their own imaginations about what the heck is this? Why do they have someone who's a trans influencer in a bathtub playing around with their brand with their face on the Bud Light can? Didn't work out so well, especially not when Kid Rock started shooting up cans of Bud Light. Mulvaney recently criticized the Anheuser-Busch people, stating that the brewer never reached out to Mulvaney. And what's funny about that is, well, it's probably because the person who was in charge of the promotion was forced to leave the company, either by being fired or getting stuck on a leave of absence. So it's not like Alyssa Heinersheet, who left the company, was going to be calling Mulvaney back, or Heinersheet's boss, Daniel Blake, who also was forced to leave the company after this promotion. They deserved it. They mismanaged this completely. Even if it was a mistake, they should have been reaching out to customers and explaining what happened. But that's why nobody called Mulvaney. Pretty much nobody was working there anymore. Anheuser-Busch's other brands also have fallen out of favor because people are watching this company closely. They are not buying brands that are associated with Anheuser-Busch. This is a very serious boycott because normally you see a boycott, it affects one product for a limited amount of time. This isn't even a boycott. This is a complete rebrand. There was so much talk and so much promotion through social media about how Dylan Mulvaney was tied up with Bud Light and how Dylan Mulvaney was the new face of Bud Light, something they really didn't even push back on, that the brand got completely rebranded into the kind of beer where if you like to jump into a bathtub with Dylan Mulvaney, or if that's a fantasy that somebody has, that's the kind of person that should be drinking Bud Light now. It's not for anyone else. Sales of Michelob Ultra declined by 4.4% compared to a 4% decline the previous week, while Budweiser was down 12.1% compared to a 12.3% for the previous week, according to the consultancy. Anheuser-Busch was trying to entice beer drinkers with rebates for its struggling brands and with a new advertising campaign for Bud Light. Williams from Bump Williams said, any media company takes time to manifest themselves. Meanwhile, the second largest beer brand, Modelo Especial, whose international distribution is controlled by Anheuser-Busch, but in the US is owned by Constellation Brands, continues to grab market share away from Bud Light. The number of Modelo units sold grew by 6.4% in the week ended June 24th, compared to a 4.5% increase in the previous week. On a year-to-date basis, Bud Light still remains number one, but Modelo has been outselling its rivals since May. In the 4-week period ended June 24th, Modelo controlled 8.6% market share compared with Bud Light's 7.1% market share. The data shows. Quote, unless something dynamic happens to bring the lapsed Bud Light customers back into the fold, I don't think we can expect anything to reverse the course of Bud Light's trajectory, Williams told the Post. Retailers and distributors are carefully monitoring this week's sales reports to make decisions on how much shelf space to devote to new beer brands as well. Quote, retailers are trying to keep their shelves stocked with the right assortment, Williams said, adding that Bud Light could lose valuable shelf space as it continues to decline and other brands grow. We've talked about shelf space. I started talking about it even before Anson Fredericks brought it up, but it's a real thing. If you have merchandise on a shelf and you're a manufacturer, you have a chance to sell that merchandise. If you have half the space for some reason because your sales are really not where they used to be, you're not able to sell as much merchandise for two main reasons. One, less exposure. People just see less of it, so it becomes less of an option for people to choose from. Two, something called stockouts. Stockouts are very common. Stockouts are, well, you're not going to stock an unlimited amount of any product. There's always a lot of products to sell. So when you sell the product, you put a certain amount in with an idea in mind of how much you're going to sell over a certain amount of time. It's actually very common to have stockouts. So if people are going on a trip or something like that and they want to pick up a bunch of beers to bring along with them, they might buy out whatever is there, and then whoever else comes to go and buy that beer, it's not going to be there when they want to go buy it. That's also an advantage that Bud Light has had because it's been so available that anyone who actually wanted to buy it was never met with an empty shelf where they were like, oh, wow, I can't buy the Bud Light I wanted to buy. So at that 31.3%, they've had the advantages of having so much inventory around that anyone who wanted to buy it was able to buy it. But that's, of course, going to be working against them as they lose shelf space, as there's no more massive rebates because they can't continue them forever, and as these boycotts continue because people just don't want to invest themselves in or get anywhere associated with this brand. And speaking of rebates, Bud Light is now selling for less than water in some US stores because after the rebates, water is actually more expensive to buy than Bud Light, but they still can't keep the volume up. Anson Fredericks, former president of distribution for Anheuser-Busch, wrote a great article in the Daily Mail. I did a video on it called Total Chaos, but he was also just recently on Fox Business in an interview, again talking about the problems with Anheuser-Busch and what they need to do to solve them. It's very straightforward, and he's shocked that they haven't stepped up and done it. Anheuser-Busch CEO not addressing the problem will keep customers away, former exec warns. Ex-Anheuser-Busch president says beer brand could have seen a comeback if it didn't get involved with politics. As Bud Light sales continue to tumble, the former president of the beer's parent company has called for the CEO to step down before the brand really sours. Quote, the chasm that we're seeing between Bud Light and its consumers is only going to intensify because every time you come out with one of these weak statements or some of these just platitudes, that's not addressing the problem. And until you address the problem, I don't see consumers coming back and not coming back to the brand. Fredericks, who was Anheuser-Busch's president of sales and distribution and worked at the company for more than 10 years, claimed the current CEO, Brendan Whitworth, missed several opportunities to steer the brand in the right direction. Quote, "We're in the 4th month of this right now," Fredericks noted. "This is something that should have been addressed 3 or 4 months ago by clearly pointing out and saying, hey, Bud Light historically was always a brand that didn't get involved in politics. And while that might not have worked, it certainly would have helped." Fredericks called on Whitworth to openly admit the advertising campaign decision was not in the best interests of Anheuser-Busch shareholders. The shareholders of Anheuser-Busch are those firefighters, doctors, police officers. And to make sure that their retirement accounts and 401k accounts are done well, companies need to focus on great products and services, period. That's it, the former president argued. Not necessarily get involved in a lot of different political issues or social issues. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Do you think that Bud Light has a chance of coming back? It doesn't look so good for them because the CEO isn't even trying to be honest with the customers. Anson Fredericks is amazing because he's actually been at the company. If he was still at the company, he obviously would have stood up and said something, or would have blocked this promotion in the first place because the promotion with Mulvaney was absolutely ridiculous. Always love to see what you think. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Always love to see your ideas. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another video. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.